up close to 4%. JG Summit likewise, also in the green here, up 3.5%. SM Investments also higher by 3.25%. A year since the Rice Tariffication Law was implemented, tariffs from imported rice already rose 27% in 2020. The first quarter alone, customs is already on pace to garner 10 billion pesos as collections hit 4.3 billion pesos. The revenue will help fund the RCEP, or Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund. Now, how are farmers looking forward to that? Joining us is Raul Montemayor, National Manager of the Federation of Free Farmers. Good afternoon, Sir Raul.
Good afternoon, pa.
Okay, Raul, is the Rice Tariffication Law delivering on its promise? Have productivity and income increased for our farmers?
Well, on the part of the farmers, it has been a disaster because the palay price, the price that farmers get for their produce, has gone down very drastically. And that was to be expected. And the idea was that would be offset by certain measures of government, like RCEP. No? But I would say that the drop in farmers' income has been significantly more than the support that they have received from the government.
Okay.
But I think yes.
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I think the bigger issue here is, have the consumers benefited? Kasi sayang naman yung sacrifice ng farmers kung hindi nakinabang yung consumers. And you know, our analysis shows that the consumer prices today are just about the same as they were in 2017, before the RCEP took effect. 2018 was an abnormal year. You will remember there was a rice crisis at that time. So it's not proper to compare prices today against that. No? But we compare it against 2017, which is a normal year. Farmers, consumers are no better off, actually. They are paying the same price for rice as they were paying in 2017. And our analysis also shows that although imports were able to bring down wholesale costs of rice, that the savings in terms of cheaper imports was not passed on to consumers. It was pocketed by traders and importers at the expense of farmers. That is the story of the Rice Tariffication Law.
Now, one thing you mentioned earlier, the cost of producing palay. When you try to take a look at the figures here across Southeast Asia, we're still one of the most expensive ones, at least at 12 pesos and 72 centavos per kilogram, if I'm not mistaken, compared to Vietnam, only at 6 pesos, and Thailand also at 8 pesos. Why is that? Is this in any way an indication of how at least the promise of at least bringing down cost of production is not taking effect yet?
Yes. First of all, the reason why we have high cost of production is because the agriculture sector, the rice sector particularly, has been neglected for a long time, no? In terms of irrigation support primarily, and also support for other inputs to production. But the whole idea of RTL was to bring down that cost of production so that even if we start importing from countries like Vietnam, our farmers can compete, and you can reduce the cost of production, number one, by increasing the yield, and number two, by reducing the cost of inputs and other inputs to production. And on both counts, we do not see the RCEP and the RTL in general having a significant impact 2 years since the law was passed. If I look at our output, for example, our output in 2020 was just about the same as it was in 2017. Okay, so again, it's a matter of where do you compare the performance of agriculture. You compare it to last year, but if last year was a bad year, chances are this year will be a good year because you rebound from the bad year. But if you take it from a wider historical perspective, our output in 2020 was what we had also in 2017.
But by the same output, sir, can you give us figures here? How much was the
Uh,
output in 2020 and at what
uh,
level was it back in 2017?
in 2020, it's for the whole year, 19.3 million tons of palay.
Mhm.
And then in 2017, it was 19.27 million tons of palay. So almost the same. But output is not really very significant. We have to look at yield because that is
Mhm.
the crucial factor when we try to reduce cost of production. The average yield in 2020 was 4.09 tons per hectare per harvest. In 2017, it was 4.01. So there is a 3% improvement in yield. The target of the DA to make us competitive is to raise our yield from 4 tons per hectare to
Mhm.
6 tons per hectare, a 50% increase. In
Mhm.
the past 2 years, we have only achieved a 3% increase.
Mhm. What then
And
do you think is wrong here, sir? Well, I mean, considering the RCEP program here, I mean, it promises a disbursement of 10 billion pesos, a huge chunk of that going to mechanization at the same time, a number, at least half of it going to seed propagation and even promotion and credit assistance for farmers here. So, what's amiss here?
okay, first of all, the RCEF is really not that big. If you compare it to the industry is about a 350 billion peso industry. So 10 billion is just a drop in the bucket. Sometimes they tend to overemphasize the significance of RCEF, but by itself, it will not solve the problem. Secondly, there have been problems and delays in implementation because under the law, they ask small agencies to handle billions of pesos of programs, and these are mainly research agencies that do not
Mhm.
have operational capacity. So there was a lot of time wasted in recruiting people, setting up satellite offices, etc. And I think the bigger issue is that the intervention of the DA, even under RCF, has become very compartmentalized. Okay? Under RCF, you can get only seeds, you can only get machine. If you
Mhm.
need fertilizer, you cannot get it under RCF. You go to another window. So what is happening now is they give certain support in one area, but they neglect to give the other important support measures. So one intervention offsets the gains from the other intervention, you're back to zero.
Mhm.
It's a one step forward and one step backward.
But isn't the pandemic, in a way, at least providing additional setback here for the implementation of RCEF?
In the delivery of services to farmers. But in terms
Mhm.
of farmers being able to produce, there is no effect on farmers because they plant in the area, wala naman silang nilipatan ng COVID kundi yung kalabaw. It's a
Mhm.
very open area. There's very little risk there. They did have some problems for a time in selling and in also buying some fertilizer and inputs, but I don't think those are very big problems for farmers.
Given that, sir, what's your outlook for the sector this year? How much of an output are you looking at? And at the same time, are we expecting at least rice to be sufficient for the remainder of 2021?
Well, the DA is targeting a very ambitious level of production. But again, like I told you, the level of production is not that important anymore because, in fact, because we have already opened up our borders to imports. The more you increase your production and the more imports you come in, the more you go into a surplus or a glut situation that will just depress palay prices for farmers. No? So I'm more concerned about cost of production, about
Mhm.
competitiveness, no? Especially yield, how to improve yield. And I saw the targets of DA. They will improve the yield from a very not very significantly. We will still be at the 4 point something per hectare metric ton per hectare level. So I've been computing at the rate we are going, it will take us 20 years before we reach the 6 ton per hectare level. By the time patay na yung mga farmer.
Mhm.
So I think the RCEF and the DA, okay, they're doing what they can, but it's helping in some way the farmers. No? but it is not creating the impact that we intended from RTL. And I think if we do not do something about this, the farmers will get even more in a worse situation.
Okay, definitely a long way to go there for the sector, especially when it comes to reaping the benefits or RCEP, or at least improving the program. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. National Manager of the Federation of Food Farmers, Sir Raul Montemayor. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Here are other headlines we're keeping our eyes on. Over 26,000 job opportunities here and abroad will be offered in the Labor Department's online job fair, which will open this Labor Day, May 1. DOLE says over 560 employers are currently in need of workers in various industries like manufacturing, business process outsourcing, health services, retail, and construction. Over 23,000 local jobs will be offered at the virtual fair, while some 3,000 overseas jobs will also be available. Job seekers can access the virtual fair through different links posted by the Labor Department. Meanwhile, the palace announced that some 5,000 COVID-19 vaccine doses will be provided to minimum wage earners and OFWs under the A4 priority group. DOLE is coming up with a master list of qualified recipients for the symbolic inoculation ceremony on Labor Day. Meanwhile, the palace also announced that frontliners in Congress have likewise been considered by the IATF as qualified vaccine recipients under the A4 priority group. The Philippines agrees to explore areas of economic cooperation with Chile within the year. Last month, Trade Undersecretary Seferino Rodolfo and Chile's Vice Minister for Trade, Rodrigo Yanez, signed an MOU establishing the Joint Economic Commission between the two nations. If realized, this will mark the first JEC that the Philippines will have with a South American country. Rodolfo said the panel will help both governments improve the current trade and investment level between the two countries. The DTI explains that the measure will address challenges posed by geographic distance and generally low levels of awareness by businesses in each other's markets. And those are the biggest stories this trading day, April 28, 2021. Catch Business World live again tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. for the market open and 3:15 p.m. for the market close. I'm Jes Delos Santos. We are One News. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines.